Rama was dragging himself to death gradually. During the last 15 days, carrying the dead load of cotton with him. On the government cotton purchase center of Kalam, cotton was gathered in big heaps. The weighing machine was moving at a snail's pace, and heaps were ever increasing, looking like dead elephants. Never before had cotton harvest been seen in such amazing measures, just like sugarcane harvests. The factories could not bear the load of sugarcane. The government showed its empty pockets while purchasing abundant cotton. One could see that the farmer was dying in drought, but one really wondered why he should die in such abundance. Those whose cotton was weighed were dismissed by the banks declaring they had no money. Those who were waiting for the cotton to be weighed were losing their courage day by day. For how long will they carry jawar bhakri and chutney from home? Who would go to the fields and earn a living? The sun would move from east to west, and Rama would lose patience, waiting. How long? He felt that he should set the cotton bags afire and jump into the blazing flames. He was tired of his family and his wretched life. Let me sell out the 2 buffaloes, hand over the farm to somebody to look after, and make way to Pune, Mumbai in search of a job. But the children are young. A daughter is of marriageable age. The roof of the house needs to be changed. The cow shed needs repairing. The buffalo will soon have a calf. There will be 2 milk buffaloes then. Rama's thinking was again geared towards his family. The undying hope was making way through impossibilities. If not today, tomorrow my cotton will be weighed. The government purchaser would give me money. From that, some debts could be cleared. Who knows, I could arrange the wedding of my daughter. With this hope in mind, he was waiting in scorching the sun for a whole month. At night, the biting cold would freeze him. Mosquitoes and other insects were abundant in that area. Farmers from the vicinity were sick of this nauseating weight. The chairman of the market yard, the graders who decided the gravity of cotton, the men on weighing machine, the coolies who carried cotton bags to the weighing machines, the canteen owner who refused drinking water to those who did not buy tea. Together, they were all exploiting the farmers. The cold-hearted exploiters had reached very far. The dacoits were devouring money with amazing skill. Papers were perfect, and money directly reached the pockets of the bureaucracy. No complaints, no skirmishes. Everybody had his definite share. It was faithfully reached to him, as if a big machine was at work, each part playing its role. For this huge exploitation plan, the poor farmer had lost everything except his skin and bones. He hardly had any understanding of this conspiracy. But after the stay at the government purchase center, Rama came to know it to the last detail. He had become extremely restless. His pain knew no bounds. He felt that the whole climate has become a fort of mud and was devouring him. The cars moving madly on the roads, the microphones tied on their tops, were piercing deep into his flesh and mind. Rama, in scorching sun, sat by the cotton bags like a burnt dead man. With lifeless eyes, he gazed at the running cars, flying flags, and boards hanging on the cars and jeeps. The harsh slogans were hitting his ears ruthlessly. His whole body was as if swaying in the storm, and his nerves were trembling with some unknown fear. Somebody was lifting him in the air and throwing him back on the floor. Cycle, cycle, give vote to cycle. Cycle for the welfare of the farmers. Cycle, the only hope of farmers. Cycle for giving justice to farmers. The voice in the microphone would die out after a while. The next moment, another rickshawala would come screaming and wiping out the effect of the earlier campaign. He would try to create a new effect. Along with that, some commentary on the state of the country. 50 years after independence, where is our farmer? Is he happy? Is labor class given justice? Is the humiliation of our women folk stopped? Our problems, water, food, clothes, shelter, food for cattle, are they solved? Look friends, these people have led the country to hell. The words would be strained like a rubber and would die out. Rama would sit there like a bag of cotton. Life would be sapped out of his whole existence. I had gone to my village during elections. As I was sitting outside the house at the corner, the passers-by lingered there. They would ask, "When did you come?" "Yesterday only." "For elections?" "Well, yes." "And you all meet when I come here." Then the person would know my desire to talk and enter the house. Chatting about crops, politics, and elections, we would come to the topic of sugarcane and cotton. Then the face of the villagers would darken. He would say, "I don't know how to put it, but things are in a very bad shape. Won't you tell me?" I wanted him to confide in me. I could sense that something had gone seriously wrong. And at last, he whispered, "You know, Rama Kale is taken to Barshi." "Is that so? Why?" Seems to be derailed. Crying, "Cotton, cotton," tearing his clothes, bursts out laughing and suddenly starts crying. Even after a sumptuous harvest, this was the plight of Rama Kale. The friend who was relating the story had tears in his eyes. He further said, Rama took loan for growing cotton. He sold his wife's ornaments and bought fertilizers and pesticides. He had also grown sugarcane, but the factory people did not turn up to collect it. His relatives had suggested a young man for his daughter. His wife had to undergo an operation. His buffalo had died. When calamities come in such a succession, how would a person face those? How would he survive? I had no answer to his questions. Parliament elections were declared. However, leaders found it difficult to face people. Wherever they went, people would cross them and ask, "What are you going to do about sugarcane and cotton?" Leaders of opposition too had a hard time. Slogans were meeting slogans. The state government would blame the central government and vice versa. The farmer was disgusted with this height of irresponsible behavior. In the end, orders were issued to make bulk purchases of cotton. Government officers got busy. Government jeeps were rushing to cotton purchase centers. Newspapers flashed the news of bulk purchases. Graders, coolies, and men on weighing machines found this a golden opportunity to make money. A coolie got more money than a holder of 4-5 acres of land. Farmers vowed that they will never grow cotton again. Rama did not have money to grease the palms of the grader. He was asked to stay out of the line. The men on the weighing machine were not ready to touch his cotton bags because he did not have money to fill their pockets. Rama bent down and grabbed the feet of the grader, but he mercilessly set aside Rama's bags. Rama lodged a complaint against the grader, but the grader made a counter complaint that Rama insulted him and disturbed the purchase procedure. Rama was shocked. He started screaming at the top of his voice. He started tearing his clothes. He shouted, "I will pour kerosene on my body and burn myself. I'll tie a rope to this weighing machine and hang myself." 4 sensible men held him and consoled him. They sadly brought the bitter truth to his notice. "Rama, you don't understand. Look, nobody does your work if you are not ready to pay. If you want to have something, you must give something. Otherwise, how would the grader increase the rate of your cotton?" Yes, we know. Justice is on your side. But who cares for justice? My uncle practically threw 100 rupee notes. Then his cotton bag started moving. Rama was looking absent-mindedly at each face. He couldn't make anything out of the conversation. Without blinking his eyelids, he sat there like a statue. His eyeballs looked swollen. His eyes got reddened. At last, he got up with an inhuman bearing. He tore open his shirt. He moved like lightning, as if some inhuman spirit had caught him. He would scream, "For heaven's sake, don't devour money. Eat anything, eat cow dung, go to hell, but don't take bribe." He started throwing stones and people got frightened. Women looked out from inside the houses and chuckled, "Oh, poor man has gone mad. What must have happened to him?" Some people were making fun of him. A shopkeeper called the police. They took him in their custody. After 2-3 days, he was brought home. His family members saw that he had gone violent. They tied him to a pole. In the end, they took him to Barshi. It was Rama's cousin who was relating the story to me. I was numb and speechless. The government purchase department had already made a certificate that Rama Kale had become a victim of some psychological malady due to stress. Nobody bothered as to what had happened to Rama. The family members wept for some days. Some leaders came for consolation, but they were busy with elections. Even while uttering a few consoling words, they did not forget to ask for votes. Everybody in the village forgot Rama and his plight. Everyone was busy with his or her own routine. Rama's cousin sat in front of me quietly without uttering a single word. I did not know what to say. At this moment, we could hear sounds of microphones. I heaved a long sigh and asked the cousin, "Is there an election meeting?" "No," he replied. "These are home visits. The election code does not allow meetings. So, these are the new tactics." Before his words died, a flock of 10 to 12 people rushed to my house. They were leaders and election propagandists. Following them came some people. Rama's elder son was among them. I stopped him and asked, "Tell me, how's your father?" "Better now." He responded rather coolly and said further, "The doctor has advised to take him to Yeravda's mental hospital." With these words, Rama's son got ready to make seating arrangements for the leaders. He threw open the carpet and cast off the dust.